"Get your hands off me. I paid for this seat." The sentence didn't rise. It didn't need to. It landed in the cabin the way a dropped glass lands on tile. Sudden, final, impossible to unhear. A phone camera clicked. Somewhere near the galley, a woman gasped. And then came a sound that didn't belong on an aircraft that hadn't even left the gate. The tight plastic zip of a restraint being pulled closed around a man's wrists. This was Elijah Marsh, seat 2A. 30 pounds of scuffed silver watch on his left wrist, a $40 hoodie on his back, and in the overhead bin above him, a leather satchel worth more to the United States government than most cities' annual budgets. In 90 seconds, he would be dragged face down across a first-class carpet, in front of 43 strangers, because a woman with 24 years of seniority had decided, in under 4 seconds, that he didn't belong there. She did not know about the $46 billion contract in that satchel. She did not know that by the next morning, her certainty would not just cost her a job. It would cost Continental Crest Airways nearly everything it had. Rewind 3 hours to a leather chair in the Ashcroft International Airport lounge in Atlanta, where a tired man was about to become the answer to a question nobody at that airline wanted asked out loud. What happens when the person you decide doesn't belong turns out to be the one holding your entire company in his hand? The Meridian Club Lounge at Ashcroft International was built to be a filter. Marble countertops, the low clink of champagne flutes, the particular hush of people who believed their calendars were more important than yours. Into that hush walked a man who did not fit the frame. Faded jeans, a black hoodie with the hood down, sneakers that had clearly walked more miles than they had left in them. He folded himself into a corner chair by the window, put in a pair of scratched noise-canceling headphones, and closed his eyes. He was 39 years old, high cheekbones, a stillness in his face that people mistook, always, reliably, for something smaller than it was. 2 seats over, a woman in a blindingly white blazer leaned toward her husband. "How does someone like that get lounge access?" she murmured, not quietly enough. Her husband shrugged without looking up from his phone. Staff pass, probably. Standards aren't what they were. Elijah heard every word. He always did. He had learned a long time ago that responding to every small cruelty was a tax he could no longer afford to pay. Instead, he checked his watch. His father's watch, scratched stainless steel, 22 years old, the crystal fogged permanently at one corner, and did the math on how many hours of sleep he might get before Frankfurt. He was not tired the way a delayed flight makes you tired. He was tired the way 91 straight hours inside a windowless server facility outside Reston, Virginia, makes you tired, the kind of exhaustion that lives in your teeth. 3 hours earlier, in a room at the Pentagon that did not officially exist on any visitor log, Elijah had signed the largest single defense technology contract in a decade. $46 billion over 9 years. Project Meridian, a quantum-encrypted logistics backbone that would route every classified supply chain the Department of Defense operated across 3 continents. He had built it, Vantage Quantum Systems. 3 people in a converted garage outside Austin, 12 years ago, laughed out of 4 investor meetings before the 5th one changed everything. His phone buzzed. A text from Dana Cho, his chief of staff since the garage days. "Don't forget the ambassador's reception in Frankfurt is black tie. Please, for the love of God, do not show up in that hoodie." He typed back, "No promises." Dana knew the hoodie wasn't rebellion. It was a filter of his own. If a person couldn't see past $12 of cotton to what was underneath, that told him everything about them he needed to know, and it cost him nothing to find out early. Now boarding first class and Crest Elite members for Flight 618 to Frankfurt, a voice said over the speaker. He shouldered a plain black backpack, no logo, nothing that announced anything, and walked to the gate. Seat 2A was a private pod, lie-flat seat, a screen the size of a laptop, a locking storage bin beneath the ottoman. He tucked his backpack under his feet, slid the leather satchel into the bin, latched it, and exhaled for what felt like the first time in 3 days. That's when he first saw Barbara Kessler. She was 54, with a helmet of blonde hair that had not moved in a decade, and a smile built entirely of teeth. 24 years with Continental Crest Airways. All of them, in her own telling, spent guarding a dying standard of what flying was supposed to be. She remembered white gloves. She remembered 7-course meals in coach. She had written 2 formal memos to management about the decline of the cabin, been sent to sensitivity retraining twice for what HR delicately called disparate boarding practices, passed both quizzes with a smile, and returned exactly to form, because Barbara Kessler did not believe she was prejudiced. She believed she had standards. There is, she would have told you, a difference. She had served plenty of black passengers without incident, athletes, executives in 3-piece suits, entertainers with entourages. Those people, in her private ledger, had earned their seats and dressed the part. The man in 2A, in a hoodie with the hood down and sneakers with a split seam at the toe, had not. She decided this in under 4 seconds. She would later be unable to explain, under oath, what exactly the 4th second had revealed that the first 3 hadn't. Barbara arrived at his row with her professional smile, locked into place like a mask glued on that morning. "Welcome aboard, sir. Mind if I take one more look at your boarding pass?" He pulled one earbud free, sighed, held up his phone. Confirmed name, confirmed seat. She said, drawing the sound out, glancing at her tablet, back at his screen, at him. Just want to be sure the system didn't glitch. "We reseat passengers sometimes." She smiled wider. "Can I get you something to drink while I double-check?" "Water's fine, thank you." She walked away and, passing the junior flight attendant, Nina Alvarez, 23 years old and 11 days into her first international rotation, leaned in. "Keep an eye on 2A." Nina frowned. "Why? He hasn't done anything." 24 years, Barbara said, straightening a napkin that didn't need straightening. "You get a feel for these things. He's a problem waiting to happen." Nina looked at Elijah, eyes closed, headphones back on, bothering absolutely no one, and felt something twist low in her stomach that she would spend the rest of that night trying to name. 2 rows up in 1A sat Eleanor Voss, 64, a retired federal judge from the Southern District of New York, reading glasses low on her nose, a stack of appellate briefs on her lap out of habit more than necessity. 30 years on the bench had taught her exactly what injustice sounded like before it fully arrived. She had heard its opening notes in 1,000 depositions. She was hearing them now, in a conversation 2 rows back that was trying very hard to be quiet. She turned her phone face down on the tray table, opened the voice memo app, and pressed record. Old habits. Across the aisle in 3C, Daniel Ortiz, 44, a VP of brand strategy in a tailored charcoal suit, opened his laptop and did not see a single word on the screen, because 22 years ago he had been the man in that seat. Different airline, different city, same certainty in someone's eyes. He had been pulled aside, interrogated for 40 minutes about a frequent flyer status the staff was sure he'd stolen, made to produce 3 separate forms of identification, and finally, grudgingly, allowed to reboard with no apology at all. 200 passengers had watched. Not one had said a word. He had promised himself, that day, that he never would be one of the 200 again. His phone buzzed. A text from his daughter, 17. "Dad, remember what you always tell me? Stand up for what's right even when it's hard. Love you. Safe flight." He put the phone face up on the armrest, camera app open, and waited. 3 rows back, Gary Whitmore, 48, VP of Regional Sales for Halloway Pharmaceuticals, was having what he would later describe, with a straight face, as an unacceptable evening. His entertainment screen flickered on, flickered off, flickered on again. He flagged Barbara down, with 2 fingers snapped in the air. "This is Unacceptable. I fly this route twice a month. Do you understand what this airline makes off my account every year? I am so sorry, Mr. Whitmore. Let me reset You already reset it twice. I want a new seat. The cabin is completely full tonight, sir. Then make one, he said, arms folding across his chest, with the finality of a man who had spent 2 decades hearing yes. Or, I will be on the phone with your VP of Customer Relations before we push back from this gate. I have his direct line. Barbara's smile tightened by exactly 1 degree. A formal complaint from a Crest Elite million-miler meant paperwork, an incident review, a mark against a record she'd kept spotless for 2 decades. She understood that threat in her bones. Her eyes swept the cabin, calculating, looking for the seat that could be moved, without consequence. Someone who wouldn't escalate, wouldn't have a corporate number to call, wouldn't cause the same bureaucratic headache Gary Whitmore was threatening. Her gaze landed on 2A. The calculation took less time than it takes to blink. 1 row behind Whitmore, apparently absorbed in a dry technical manual on quantum encryption protocols, sat Lieutenant Colonel Thomas Reyes of the United States Air Force, 51, on his way to a classified NATO logistics briefing in Ramstein. He hadn't looked up yet. He would very soon, and when he did, the entire trajectory of this story would bend. Barbara straightened her jacket and walked the length of the cabin, heels clicking with the confidence of someone who had made this walk 1,000 times and never once been wrong. She stopped at 2A and tapped Elijah's shoulder with 2 fingers. He opened his eyes, removed his headphones with the unhurried patience of a man conserving energy for a fight he could already see coming. Sir, we've had an equipment issue with one of our seats. We're going to need to move you. Move me where? Economy Plus. Window seat. I can offer complimentary drinks and a $300 travel credit for the trouble. He looked at her the way a man looks at someone who has just asked him to fly the plane himself. No, her smile flickered a hairline crack in the plaster. I'm sorry? No, thank you. I'm not moving. Sir, I'm not asking. I'm telling you. And I'm telling you, Elijah said, and his voice didn't rise. It just sharpened, the way a blade does when you strip the cloth off it, that I paid $12,500 for this exact seat. I have a confirmed reservation. I haven't broken a single rule, and I am not giving it up because another passenger is upset about a flickering television. The question hung in the recycled air between them. Or, Elijah said, do Crest Elite members get to decide who belongs in first class based on what they're wearing? There was no good answer to that, and both of them knew it. And so did the 11 other passengers, now very deliberately pretending not to listen. From 1A, Eleanor Voss lowered her glasses without looking up from her lap. Excuse me, I couldn't help but overhear. Are you asking this gentleman to give up a seat he purchased? Ma'am, this is a crew matter. I've spent 30 years watching people in your position use that exact sentence to describe something illegal, Eleanor said, and reached for her phone, turning it face up, the red recording dot blinking. I'm Eleanor Voss, retired federal judge, Southern District of New York. Please continue. I'm listening very carefully. Something in Barbara's chest went cold for the first time. A recording, a judge, but she had already committed, and backing down now would mean admitting, in front of a full cabin, that she had been wrong. Richard Whitmore would still be complaining. She would have accomplished nothing, so she doubled down. Sir, if you refuse to comply, I'll have no choice but to call security. Then that will be your decision, Elijah said quietly. Not mine. If you want me out of this seat, you'll have to physically remove me. And everything that happens after that button gets pushed belongs to you. For a long moment, they simply looked at each other. Then Barbara turned, walked to the galley phone, and pressed 3 digits. This is Senior Purser Kessler, Flight 618, Gate B23. I need airport security aboard. Passenger refusing to comply with crew instruction. She hung up, turned back to the cabin, and something in her face settled into grim satisfaction. She had followed protocol. She had maintained order. In her own mind, she had done her job. The cabin went very quiet. The specific quiet of 40 people who all know something bad is coming, and none of them wants to be the first to say so out loud. 2 officers came through the jet bridge door 11 minutes later, and the temperature of the cabin dropped with them. The first was Officer Cole Bragg, 27, 3 years on the job, walking with the loose-shouldered swagger of someone who had not yet had his authority meaningfully challenged. Behind him came his partner, Officer Ray Halloran, 51, 22 years in, a face that had seen this exact scene go wrong more times than he wanted to count. He'd spent the walk from the jet bridge trying to talk Bragg into slowing down. Bragg hadn't listened. Barbara intercepted them near the galley. "Thank you for coming." He's refused multiple direct instructions. He's been combative. Halloran's eyes went to seat 2A, a man sitting quietly, hands visible, not raising his voice. Combative was not the word that came to mind, but Bragg was already moving. "Sir." Bragg's voice was pitched to command the cabin. "Step out of the seat." "I've done nothing wrong," Elijah said, hands still on the armrests, deliberately visible. "I have a valid boarding pass. I'm in my assigned seat." "The flight crew gave you a lawful order." "The flight crew asked me to give up a seat I paid for so someone else could have it. I declined. That's my right." Halloran touched his partner's elbow. "Cole, let's get the gate supervisor first before." Bragg shook him off. "Sir, I'm not asking twice. Stand up. Officers." Eleanor Voss's voice cut through, even and precise. "I'm a retired federal judge, and I am recording this entire interaction. This man has not raised his voice, has not threatened anyone, and has not violated a single regulation. What you are about to do is unlawful detention. Ma'am, please sit down and let us do our jobs." "I am sitting down," Eleanor said, "and I am documenting an assault in progress." Bragg's face flushed. He did not like being corrected by civilians who thought they understood the law better than he did. He turned back to Elijah, and his voice found an edge. "Last chance. Stand up and come with us or I use force." "Officer," Elijah said, "I am not resisting. I am not being violent. I am refusing to give up my seat. Those are different things. If you choose force, that is your decision, and I want it understood clearly that I am giving you no cause for it." It was, perhaps, exactly the wrong sentence to say to exactly the wrong officer at exactly the wrong moment. A quiet defiance from a man in a hoodie that Bragg's bruised pride could not absorb. Daniel Ortiz saw the shift coming a half-second before it happened. His hands were shaking, but he lifted his phone and hit record. "Stop," he said, standing. His voice cracked but carried. "You're making a mistake." Every head in the cabin turned. "Sir, sit down. This doesn't concern you." "It does now." Daniel held the phone higher, angling the lens so the camera was unmistakable. "I'm Daniel Ortiz, seat 3C. I've watched this entire thing. This man has done nothing. He asked for a supervisor. He has a valid ticket. And you are about to put your hands on him." Phones came up across the cabin, not all at once, but one after another, like a string of lights catching. 11 cameras, 11 angles, all time-stamped, all about to become undeniable. Bragg's hand closed on Elijah's shoulder anyway. 7 cameras caught the exact second everything went irreversibly wrong. Lieutenant Colonel Thomas Reyes had been dimly aware of raised voices for the last several minutes. The way you register weather changing outside a window while you're reading something that requires focus. Now he set his technical manual down and gave the scene his full attention. The man in the hoodie, the careful stillness of his hands, the measured way he was speaking even now with an officer's hand on his shoulder. Something about the face was familiar. Not from a photograph exactly. From a briefing. A Pentagon briefing 3 weeks ago about the single most important civilian defense contractor currently under federal review. Reyes stood so fast his manual hit the floor. Wait, not a shout. something quieter and heavier than a shout. "Stop right now." Bragg turned, irritated. "Sir, this doesn't concern. That is Elijah Marsh." The name landed in the cabin like a dropped stone in still water. Barbara blinked. "Who?" "Elijah Marsh," Reyes said, and his voice, though quiet, had the unmistakable weight of command behind it. "Founder and CEO of Vantage Quantum Systems, the company that signed a $46 billion contract with the Department of Defense 72 hours ago to run the logistics backbone for every classified operation this country runs on 3 continents." He took a step forward. "You are about to zip tie and drag off the single most important civilian contractor the Pentagon currently has." Bragg's hand did not lift from Elijah's shoulder. It should have. It didn't. Barbara's face went the color of paper. I didn't know." "You didn't know," Reyes said, "or you didn't care to ask before you decided what he was." He turned to Bragg. "Officer, think very carefully about your next 30 seconds. Eleanor Voss, still recording, spoke quietly for the transcript. For the record, that is called assumption of criminality based on appearance. It has another name. It's illegal." For a moment, one real moment, it looked as though the whole thing might stop there. Bragg's jaw tightened, his pride and his fear briefly visible on the same face at the same time. Then pride won. "He refused a lawful order," Bragg said, quoting a federal statute now, "hiding inside procedure, the way people do when they already know they're wrong, and can't afford to admit it out loud. That's the offense. It doesn't matter who he is, Officer Bragg," Elijah said, and there was something almost gentle in it, almost sad. "This is your last chance to walk away. I'm giving it to you." Bragg's hand tightened instead of loosening. The zip-tie packet made its distinctive tearing sound. Someone in row 6 began to cry, quietly. Elijah let his body go completely slack. Not fighting, giving Bragg no resistance to justify escalating further, a lesson his father had drilled into him decades earlier, back when a black man's self-defense could be twisted into the whole story. He hit the carpet with a dull, awful thud. His satchel tumbled from the storage bin as Bragg hauled him upright, papers spilling into the aisle, and among them, clear enough for 11 cameras to catch, a document stamped in heavy black letters. Classified, Department of Defense, Project Meridian, Implementation Schedule. They dragged him past row after row of frozen faces, past Gary Whitmore, who had started this entire chain reaction over a flickering screen and now sat with his mouth slightly open, past his wife, Denise, whose hand found his wrist and squeezed hard enough to leave a mark, not out of comfort, but out of something closer to disgust. They walked him down the jet bridge, out of frame, out of the camera's reach. The damage, though, was already done. 11 videos. 11 timestamps. A retired federal judge's 43 minutes of recorded audio already sent, before anyone thought to ask her not to 3 news desks and the Justice Department's Civil Rights Division. Daniel Ortiz's hands were shaking so badly, it took him 3 tries to post the video. He typed the caption anyway. "Just watched a man dragged off a plane in handcuffs for refusing to give up a seat he paid for. He asked for a supervisor. He never raised his voice. 11 of us recorded it. This is what it looks like." Continental Crest Shame Elijah Marsh. He pressed send at 6:52 p.m. Eastern. By 8, the hashtag was the #1 trending topic in the country. By the time the Department of Defense issued a 17-word statement. "We are aware of the incident involving Elijah Marsh. We are reviewing our transportation partnerships with Continental Crest Airways." It read less like a press release and more like a verdict. The stock ticker told the rest of the story faster than any headline could. Continental Crest, ticker CCA, had closed the previous day at $131 a share. By the time the New York markets opened the next morning, it had already lost 12 points in after-hours trading, and it kept falling, in real time, on the screen at the front of an emergency boardroom on the 41st floor of the airline's Charlotte headquarters, where CEO Walter Sinclair stood at the window and watched 40 years of work bleed out at $9 a minute. How bad, he asked, though he already knew. His CFO didn't look up from the screen. We opened at 109. We're at 62 and still falling. 47 corporate travel accounts have already pulled their contracts this morning. Combined, that's about $4 billion a year, gone before lunch. The military side. The general counsel's voice was flat. The Department of Defense has suspended every Continental Crest flight carrying classified personnel as of 7 a.m. That's another $3 billion annually. And they've suspended our eligibility to bid on future transport contracts pending a full review. Board member Alicia Fenwick, one of the few dissenting voices in a boardroom that had spent 2 decades agreeing with itself, spoke into the silence. Have we reached out to Mr. Marsh? His attorney sent a letter at 2 this morning, the general counsel said. He's suing the airline, suing Kessler personally, suing the airport authority. He's not asking for damages. She looked up. He's asking for an independent oversight board, a full audit of discrimination complaints going back 5 years. Mandatory retraining with actual accountability, not the checkbox kind. And, she paused. Vantage Quantum submitted a formal bid yesterday to acquire our entire fleet and route structure in the event of bankruptcy. The room went silent in a different way. He's not trying to destroy us, Sinclair said slowly, understanding arriving a half-second too late, the way it always does. He's trying to own us. Then we have 2 choices, Fenwick said. We fight this, protect our pride, and probably lose everything. Or we admit we failed, and we let him rebuild it his way. We had a senior purser with 2 prior write-ups for exactly this behavior, and she was still working first class. Fenwick continued, before anyone could argue. We had a policy that let a passenger be dragged off a plane in handcuffs on nothing but a flight attendant's gut feeling. 50 million people have watched the video by now. We don't get to deny this. We can only decide how we respond to it. Sinclair turned from the window. What happened to Kessler? Terminated last night. For cause. No severance. Named personally in the suit. And the junior attendant, Alvarez, gave a full statement to the FBI at midnight. Corroborates everything. Also mentioned she'd been quietly written up 2 weeks ago for an unrelated infraction, right after she raised concerns internally about Kessler's seating patterns. Rehire her, Sinclair said immediately. Back pay, public apology. We need people who tell the truth, not people who stay quiet to survive. Barbara Kessler learned all of this from her Brooklyn apartment, sitting in yesterday's clothes on a couch she hadn't left since 6 that morning, watching her own face, pulled from a corporate headshot and a since-deleted Facebook profile. Cycle across 3 different news channels. A legal analyst on one of them was reading from her employment file. 2 prior written complaints for discriminatory seating practices. 3 completed rounds of sensitivity training. All 3 passed with a perfect quiz score. Which raises the question, the analyst said, of whether the training simply wasn't working, or whether she was ignoring it entirely. Her sister called. Mom's nursing home is getting phone calls. People threatening to picket. You have to do something. I don't know what to do, Barbara said, and her voice sounded strange in her own ears, hollow, unfamiliar. The union lawyer was more direct later that afternoon. There are 11 videos, a federal judge's sworn recording, and a military officer's corroboration. I won't lie to you. You're going to lose the civil suit. The only question is how much it costs you. How much? Everything. Your savings. Your apartment. Pa sitting alone, that night, replaying the footage for what must have been the 40th time. Some small and stubborn corner of Barbara's mind still whispered the same sentence it had been whispering for 24 years. But he looked like he didn't belong there. That whisper was the entire problem. It always had been. It was the exact thing 3 rounds of training had tried and failed to dislodge. because she had never once believed it needed dislodging in the first place. Gary Whitmore's collapse arrived on a 6-hour delay and hit just as hard. He landed in Frankfurt to a phone already lit up with messages. His name was trending. Not Elijah's, his. Captured in the footage complaining about a flickering screen 2 rows behind a man being dragged past him in handcuffs, his face frozen in a small, satisfied smirk, at the exact moment security pulled Elijah past his row. His boss at Halloway Pharmaceuticals didn't waste time. Our third largest account just canceled a $4 million travel contract this morning, because our VP of regional sales is the entitled reason a stranger got arrested over a television screen. You're done here, Gary. Don't bother cleaning out your office. His wife Denise called an hour later. Emma came home from school crying today. Her classmates found the video. Do you understand that? Our 8-year-old is being asked if her father got a man arrested. I didn't get anybody arrested. You demanded they move him. You threatened to call corporate. And when they dragged him past your seat, you smiled, Gary. It's on video. You smiled like you'd won something. A long pause. I'm taking the kids to my mother's. Figure out who you want to be, because the man in that footage, I don't know him. Officer Cole Bragg's hearing took place 3 weeks later in a conference room at Port Authority headquarters that smelled like industrial carpet cleaner and bad decisions. 11 synchronized video angles played on a wall screen, while the administrator, a woman named Patricia Nolan who had run enough of these hearings to have long since run out of patience for excuses, paused the footage at the exact frame where Bragg's hand closed on Elijah's shoulder. At this timestamp, Mr. Marsh asks you calmly to remove your hand. You tighten your grip instead. Why? He was being non-compliant. Non-compliant with what, specifically? A crew instruction we've already established had no lawful basis. Bragg had no answer that survived being said out loud. Your own partner told you on this recording to step back and call a supervisor. You ignored him. A retired federal judge warned you on the record. You ignored her. This board's findings are unanimous. Excessive force, failure to de-escalate, unlawful restraint, civil rights violation. Your certification is revoked, effective immediately, and this matter is being referred to the district attorney. 9 months, in the end, in county custody, plus a permanent line through any future in law enforcement. His former partner, Ray Halloran, was promoted to senior officer and now teaches de-escalation seminars nationwide, using Flight 618 as his opening case study in what happens when ego is allowed to outrank judgment. Elijah Marsh, for his part, did not walk away from any of it unmarked, and it took him longer than he expected to admit that out loud. 3 weeks after the incident, sitting across from Dr. Renata Cole, in a quiet office in Austin, a visit he had agreed to only after his chief of staff, Dana Cho, threatened to call his father otherwise. He finally said the thing he had been avoiding. I keep feeling his hand on my shoulder, in meetings, randomly. Someone taps me to get my attention, and I'm back on that carpet. You said helpless a moment ago, Dr. Cole said, but you weren't. You made a deliberate choice not to fight back. Knowing that doesn't change how it felt. No, she agreed, it doesn't. What happened to you was an assault. The fact that you chose the smarter response doesn't make it less real. He was quiet for a long moment, turning his father's watch once around his wrist, the way he had done since he was a boy without ever quite noticing he did it. When I was 8, he finally said, my father took me into a bank to open my first savings account. Security followed us the whole time. The manager asked twice if we had enough to actually open one. My father stayed completely calm, finished the transaction, walked out with his dignity fully intact. Outside, I asked him why they treated us that way. He knelt down and told me, some people see your skin before they see anything else about you. Your job isn't to change their eyes. It's to build something so undeniable they can't look away from it. So you built Vantage. So I built Vantage. Got contracts nobody thought I could get. became, on paper, indispensable. He looked out the window, and a woman with a tablet and 24 years of seniority took one look at my hoodie and decided I was a problem in under 4 seconds anyway. That must hurt. It does, he admitted, and for the first time in 3 weeks, something in his chest loosened by a fraction. It hurts that doing everything right still wasn't enough. And it hurts knowing this happens every single day to people who don't have a $46 billion contract to make anyone stop and look twice. So what are you going to do about that? He didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice had something new in it, steadier, less brittle. Build something better. 6 months later, Elijah stood in front of 15,000 Vantage employees, in person in Austin, and streaming to 14 offices worldwide, in front of a single slot with 6 plain words on it: The Human Element Initiative. 6 months ago, he said, something happened to me that happens to people every single day who never get a hashtag and never get a headline. I was judged by my clothes instead of my character, and that judgment ended with me, zip-tied on an airplane floor in front of 43 people. He let the silence sit. We've spent 20 years building artificial intelligence smart enough to route military logistics across 3 continents without a single point of failure. We have never once built anything smart enough to flag a Barbara Kessler before she picks up that phone. He announced a $500 million, 5-year commitment to bias detection research and de-escalation training that actually measured outcomes instead of quiz scores. Leading it, Nina Alvarez, the junior attendant, who had stayed silent that night and had spent every day since trying to make sure she never would again. Alongside her, Eleanor Voss, Daniel Ortiz, and Lieutenant Colonel Thomas Reyes, on loan from the Pentagon to help build the same protocols into every contractor interaction Project Meridian touched. And one more thing, Elijah said, allowing himself something close to a smile. Continental Crest Airways filed for bankruptcy last month. Yesterday, my bid for their fleet and infrastructure was accepted. We're relaunching under a new name, Ashcroft Sky, built from the ground up on one rule: dignity in every seat. He paused. I got dragged off one of their planes. I intend to make very sure nobody is ever dragged off one of mine. 1 year to the day after Flight 618, Elijah stood near Gate B-23 at Ashcroft International, watching the first Ashcroft Sky flight prepare to board. The gate agent, a young woman named Priya, hired through the airline's new equity-focused program, scanned boarding passes with a warmth that asked nothing of anyone and assumed nothing about anyone either. A teenager approached the counter. 15 years old, hood up, back slung over one shoulder, the particular tension in his shoulders of someone bracing for a question that had followed him his whole life. Priya scanned his pass. Welcome aboard, Malik. You're in 2A today. Our best seat. Have a wonderful flight. His shoulders dropped an inch. Surprise crossed his face, followed by something that looked almost like relief. And then he walked down the jet bridge without having to prove a single thing to anyone. Elijah watched him go, turning his father's watch once around his wrist, and thought that this, not the lawsuit, not the $500 million, not the ruined stock ticker, was what justice actually looked like. Not revenge. Just a world where a kid in a hoodie could board a plane and simply belong, without carrying anyone else's assumptions onto it with him. That night, a video from Seat 2A went quietly viral in its own right, not because it was dramatic, but because it wasn't. Just a boy saying, into his phone, that for the first time in his life, he hadn't felt like he had to prove he belonged somewhere. He just had. Barbara Kessler never worked in aviation again. She settled the civil suit with the last of her savings, took a job at a call center 3 states away, and moved to a town where no one recognized the face from the videos. The settlement paid Elijah's legal fees and nothing more, exactly as he had asked. He had never wanted her money. He had wanted the record to say, clearly and permanently. What she had done and why it does. She still cannot fully explain, even now, what the fourth second told her that the first three hadn't. That may be the truest part of the whole story. Not that she was a monster, but that she was certain, and certainty, unexamined, is sometimes all it takes to end a man up face down on a carpet with his hands zip-tied behind his back.